Geek Out! Hey, welcome to another installment of Catching Up. I'm Sam.
I'm Chris.
I'm Jake.
And joining us this week, I don't know if you guys remember, we sure do, but back in June, we had a certain Ryan Nichols on this. Was it in June?
That seems like a long time ago, but I can't remember.
Yeah. Home is such a lonely place. But we had a certain Ryan Nichols on to talk about his Kickstarter for the Delta anthology, which, surprise, surprise, got funded, fully funded. So much so that quite a few of its stretch goals, maybe all of its stretch goals, we'll find out in a second, got funded as well. And, we just happen to have somebody here to kind of follow up with that. Joining us in studio this time, not via Skype or phone like most of our interviews, we have Ryan himself. Ryan, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I don't know if they've mentioned this before, but they really do not wear pants during these. So
We weren't lying, man.
Yeah. Free balling all day, every day.
You're lucky I put on underwear.
Is that underwear?
In certain countries, it's considered underwear. Not this one per se.
We call it a merkin here.
That's right.
Because it's a merca.
Yeah. So yeah, man, good to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be back.
How has Delta been in the at least 6 months, presumably, unless somebody can give me a more accurate timetable when that was. When did the Kickstarter start and end?
It was July is basically when it started. The 27th was when it launched.
Okay. Of July?
Of June.
Of June. All right.
Yes.
So it was probably
we had them around the launch, right?
Yeah. So
correct.
it was probably like late June. Now that
Right.
So, wow, that was a long time ago.
Yeah. 6
Jesus.
months. Good God. But yeah, how has how has that been now that we are since it's now been fully? Were all the stretch goals met?
Yes. Yeah. I did not expect that. Not only did all of the stretch goals get hit, the higher pledge levels, all three of the $500 pledges also got hit, which meant that I had a lot of work to do after the campaign ended.
People expected you to return on all those goal promises.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I also had 10 slots that were for me to write a short for each of those people. So I had 10 shorts to write, 3 that were actually included in the book, so they needed to be scripted, drawn, lettered, colored, everything. The thing that I didn't do in my math was realize that I had also included bonus content with every short that already existed. So I needed to do that for these new ones. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it would have been, kind of disparate.
Give me a ballpark. How many additional pages? Because it was like all digitally anyway. It was all basically done. You
Correct.
just needed the funding for production and distribution. How much? Yeah. How many additional pages did this all tack on?
24.
Okay. So
that's a whole separate comic book.
Correct. Yeah. Correct.
Damn. So how is? I mean, I think I was just talking to you earlier this week that you mentioned that you finally have the last couple pages in for Delta now.
Yes, sir. I was waiting on colors. It's one of those things where life happens for other people as well. So you're always aware of whatever delays happen in your own life. But then people that I work with regularly, my main colorist for the book, Anders Zarate, he had some delays in terms of stuff. And so that pushed things back a little bit. I guess also I'm a very laid back person. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times people that I work with, I give them a deadline and they're like, oh yeah, but he's okay. Like I'm juggling projects, so I'll do these other things as well. And I'm a little soft on that sometimes. So whenever I get to a point where I'm like, hey, I really do need this by that time, they know that's the version of, me yelling. and we got to that a couple of times with this. But everything did come together. I'm more than elated about how stuff has turned out. And because I'm a little bit creatively impatient, I did throw in a couple of extra things while I was waiting on other people to get me work. So there's a couple of surprises too.
Sweet.
Now, do you have a timetable on on distribution for all the backers and everything?
Yes. As soon as I get back to my computer in LA on the 4th, I'll finish putting the last file together, send that off to Print Ninja, and long estimate from them is physical copies getting to my apartment in 9 weeks because it is coming from China.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be faster, won't be longer. So.
Okay. So that would be like early spring-ish.
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. Now, what have you learned from? Was this your biggest Kickstarter that you personally launched? What have you kind of gleaned from self-publishing?
Yes, this is the biggest one that I was in the driver's seat for, and the thing I think that surprised me the most was how much more visibility I got out of it. I knew that the project. I felt confident that the project was going to be funded, and that getting the book out would help kind of put my name out a little bit more. I had not anticipated just having a successful Kickstarter, promoting it well, partially thanks to you guys. Thumbs up. I didn't expect the immediate feedback and reaction from that. So I've had more opportunity fall in my lap just based on having a Kickstarter that did as well as it did. And I was mentioning to you earlier, Sam, I got an email from Kickstarter 2 days ago asking me to put up another project.
Yeah.
So,
do you want to talk about that at all?
About the email or
you could
about what I'm doing next?
Either.
Okay.
Both.
So I guess Kickstarter is starting their Kickstarter 100 program, which according to the email, I haven't spoken to them directly. I just read the email.
Mm-hmm.
It's a number of projects from, projects we love, in quotation marks, whoever got that tag, which we were very fortunate to earn. They are trying to provide an extra platform for new projects moving forward. So in order for us to participate, we make a proposal. If it's accepted, it also has to include the number 100 in some of the pledge level rewards. And so that's what I'm planning on doing. I was already moving toward a Kickstarter project and kind of championing convention speeches or panels. And I had actually been talking to Sam here about that. He's going to participate in this next book that's coming out. Yes. He's a man of many, many talents.
That's what they tell me. I mean, they keep giving me the jobs, so they're usually the same jobs that just draw on the same talents. But the talents I have are pretty cool.
He is spinning plates with marshmallows on them right now.
It's quite impressive. It's a little distracting. Most of the time before we start recording, I ask him not to, but he does it anyway.
I do. And thank God they're like marshmallows, not like glass.
They are the colored marshmallows, the ones with the weird flavors. So
yes.
I mean,
you're giving away a lot of our
I'm sorry.
in-studio secrets.
I didn't know people aren't supposed to know this.
Yeah.
But the book is called Pox, a social epidemic, and that's Pox as in POC, persons of color. And the basic idea is each short follows a person of color, a character of color, who is either wrongly accused or harassed based on ethnicity. Mm-hmm. And that's the only prompt that I'm giving to each of the writers that I'm asking to participate.
Yeah, so I kind of, for my short, I basically, which is tentatively called, it could change when, this thing sees the light of day. It's called Stuck in the Middle, like the Steelers Wheel song. And for those of you who don't know at home, I'm half Korean, half Irish, but it's still a very light story, because I figured that in an anthology like this, you would get a lot of heavy shit. Like, you would get a lot of really heavy personal stories. And the question I think I got the most growing up is, what are you?
Right.
Very existential questions since like before I could tie my shoes. And I've gotten it all, because then people would just guess. That's like their second instinct. They're just like, oh, you're Filipino, or you're Italian, or you're Middle Eastern, or you're like, you're from like Bolivia.
I always assumed American Samoan.
Yeah,
that's because of the rippling muscles,
of course,
just like The Rock.
Yes, yeah. Those my well-formed glutes. But the so I kind of that's kind of the story that I have, and it's not very like I don't. There are obviously things I'm drawing from my own life that are very personal in there, but it's very much like I'm literally, it's like a Grant Morrison book, because I'm I've wrote myself into my own narrative. I'm literally winking at the reader in some cases where I'm like, hey, just because my date just called me a mutt doesn't mean we're like all like fucking mopey. Because that literally happened. Like that, like shit like that is like there. I have this like sequence where it's like, so I have one page where it's like 4 panels, and it's like every panel is somebody different at a different stage of my life, like school kids or bosses or dates or whatever, saying like, what? So what are you? And then the next page is them guessing. So like Filipino, Italian, Middle Eastern, and then the date one, which is the 4th panel, is, oh, you're a mutt. And then the next panel after that like sequence is me like kind of trying to force a smile, just kind of like, well, I never thought I'd hear a term that made like half-breed like somehow more appealing, but thank you. So like that's the story that I have in Pox.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Now we're just gonna get you an artist and get that together.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to Mikhail.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. So maybe, especially since he inks and colors too. So
I love his work.
Okay. Yeah.
How long is the story?
It'll run for just under 10 pages.
Sweet.
Yeah. So 10 pages tops.
Mm-hmm.
But it should run for just under, because it's pretty light and breezy, but I'm pretty proud of it. So
And partnered with the plans for the book and a Kickstarter to get that published. I've also been reaching out to some conventions to try to set up panels to discuss not just diversity in comics, but kind of the way that socio-political environment influences you as a creator of color. Because one of the things, I'm a mutt as well. Go ahead and use the term.
it's our term. We can take it back.
But I've never really identified myself as kind of a black creator. But one of the things that happened after the Kickstarter is I had a number of people who reached out to me and they're like, hey, you're a black creator. Like, good. Good job. And I was like, oh, okay. I guess there's, this extra social responsibility that I have that I hadn't considered. So I tried to be a little bit more cognizant of it because I do feel it's something to at least be aware of. And in my introspection and kind of consideration of our current cultural environment.
Climate.
Yes, exactly. Pox is something that was kind of born out of that meditation, we'll say.
Well, originally you and I, because we had talked about writing really for months, and I'll just kind of spill the beans a bit and kind of peek behind the curtain. You and I had been working on a book about the presidents.
Right.
And then
it's
after
super fun.
Yeah, it was actually, it was like I was about halfway through like Lyndon Johnson, and then like the election happened, and I was like, I feel like people aren't going to be that interested, like just like financially speaking, about like presidents for like the next like 4 to 8 years.
Right.
So we kind of shelved that, and then out of that was born, a more kind of social commentary.
Absolutely.
So yeah, thanks for having me aboard. I mean, how many creators outside of my novice ass self do you have lined up for this thing?
6 so far.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to put together the core team of people and to kind of get some artwork together to show. I'm following the roadmap laid out by my good friend Josh Trujillo. He's been my mentor with some of the Kickstarter stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I was in his Death Saves book, the first volume. I just turned in my story for the second volume as well, which is even more fun. But to put out the early look, and then kind of invite people to submit for extra options, because anthology projects are a good opportunity to, well, we're talking about bubbles all the time now, to find people outside of your bubble and to kind of get some different perspectives, different art styles, and put them into the same package. And that's what I'd really love to do, especially with something of this subject matter.
Yeah, I think it's, quite important. There's just so much to be kind of said, and I think we do really need, I say this like I'm a part of it, but I think there needs to be a platform. There needs to be a platform.
You are a part of it.
I guess I am. I am contributing to it.
You're kind of a big part of it.
Yeah. Well, at least, yeah.
10 pages, you just said.
Yeah. Less than 7 to 9.
20 pages?
Yeah.
I can't believe you're doing a whole graphic novel. So.
And I'm drawing it
Yeah.
and penciling. Yeah.
Who do you think you
Barry
are?
Windsor
Frank Miller?
Smith. Anytime I come across a book where somebody writes, inks, colors, and it's like, it's Barry Windsor Smith. Like that's like
Right.
I always joke that Weapon X, like he cut the trees down to make the paper because like that guy, like you have to be a fucking stud to have your name is the only name on the book because you did you know what I mean? And that book, there's a lot going on in that book too.
Oh, and
Right.
yeah.
That's
Weapon X,
that's
absolutely.
one of my favorite just pieces of like comic anything.
And that was
because
back
of-
when monthlies came out on time.
Well, yeah, it's like McCartney's
Monthly.
it's like a literal solo album, when you get like McCartney or Dave Grohl doing every instrument and producing it.
A
I love
few of
that.
my books are like one-man army
Yeah.
acts. The original, it's partially because of like the emotional effect that I get in reading it. But the original Crow by James O'Barr.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I feel fear when I'm reading that thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes. John Hinkleton's 100 Months.
Not sure of that one.
I'm surprised you don't know that guy. He was a heavy metal artist, the one that had MS. He did some Judge Dredd stuff.
Did he? Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, he's the one that like ended up committing suicide.
correct.
Right.
Yeah.
But that was his book was basically everything he felt before.
Yes.
Oh wow, I have to check that out.
It's glorious. It's terrifying. I read it once a year at least.
The Crow's like that. Like that's the book that I try to
Right.
read once a year
Yeah.
because that's one of those few examples. If anyone doesn't know the background of the Crow, that like his girlfriend was killed and he felt responsible because at the time he didn't. I guess he didn't have his license renewed or something where he couldn't drive legally. And he did it because he was lazy. And I've felt like that before doing stuff like, wait. I remember in college, my car wasn't inspected. So I had like a month or two where like, driving around illegally or whatever. And so he asked her to come pick him up somewhere because he
Right.
couldn't drive and she was killed on the way. And his way of dealing with the grief and anger and rage and everything was writing and drawing this book. And like you were saying, like you feel every bit of emotion runs the gamut in that book. And like there's like I guess the special edition that or whatever that came out a couple years
Right,
ago that's
yeah.
like only $10. Like you can find it and it's added, there's more art. And so you get like the really vicious art, you get the really poetic like beautiful art, like almost like almost like Alex Ross paintings of it, in there. And then you basically you see his kind of cathartic journey with Eric through the pages.
Right.
And you feel it like with the song lyrics and poems he does. So that's
It's
one of the
wonderful.
timers. Yeah.
And then the third one, these are in no particular order. I haven't ranked them. Is Marquis by Guy Davis. No, nothing.
No.
Oh my gosh.
You're too hip for us.
No, I worked in a comic shop that these two both used to go to. You worked there later.
Yeah.
but I feel like I failed them
Yeah.
if they have blank looks on their faces when
Yeah.
I mention these three things that I love so
well-
much.
To throw it out there, I was also a customer at that comic book shop.
I don't remember that.
I
feel bad now.
I wasn't trying to make you feel bad. When it was in University Mall, I was a very seldom customer, but I had been going to the company since it was at Burke Center.
Yeah, that's when I started. I
Yeah.
met Steve when I was
Steve's a good guy.
Yeah.
I was 16.
I was.
Oh my gosh.
Last time I was at the Main
So
Street
1
comic
year
book
ago,
store.
you're 17, right?
Yeah, you
Got a lot
don't tell
done,
my
man.
parents I'm here.
Yeah, on a school night, no less. Huh?
Why don't you guys have pants?
And now we're gonna be on those lists
yeah,
forever.
This just became a much worse.
Yeah.
It's usually pretty bad, but it's we never go across that line.
Yeah, God, we're now the only guest we're gonna get next is Chris Hansen.
Yeah.
It's an interview that he set up.
Come in with with wine coolers, like, hey, where's the party at? Oh God,
I got my GameCube.
yeah, this just got
Oh
really.
my God.
Spiraling.
we are getting dark.
We have this tendency
But anyway.
to just keep digging a hole.
Oh, I love it.
Deeper and deeper.
Yeah,
But tell us about the book, though. Tell us about the book. Get us back onto
about
the-
Marquis?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Marquis, it takes place, it's kind of like around French Revolution time period.
Okay.
It's like black and white, gray art, wash tones sometimes, occasionally. And a person is wearing one of those like plague doctor mask kind
Okay.
of situations, like black cloak with a like colonial hat on.
Yeah.
And he's fighting against demons.
Ooh.
But the thing that's kind of interesting about it, he's going to murder the crap out of these demons, and some other people are like, yo man, why are you killing that dude?
Yeah.
Because they don't see the same thing that he sees. And there's all kinds of did you see Devil's Advocate?
Yeah.
Okay, so you imagine something like that mixed with like a Van Helsing.
Is it kind of like Brotherhood of the Wolf, that French martial arts film?
Yes. I like both of those things for very separate and different reasons, which is the reason I'm hesitant to agree to that. I really just want you to read Marquis. It's not always
Don't
easy.
watch Brotherhood of the Wolf. Read Marquis.
Yes, that's the lesson. I don't dislike it, but I don't want people to walk away from that and being like, well, I watched Brotherhood of the Wolf, so I think I got it. No, no, it's not the same thing. And there is not a more perfect twist that I can think of in a graphic novel. And I say that acknowledging how many great twists there are, including the first time you read Watchmen, whatever. Marquis just did it for me. And if I still had my stuff in Virginia, I would force all three of you to read it now.
We would stop the interview and just have a big group
audio
read.
podcast of it, or I
Gentlemen.
guess that is a podcast, but yeah, audio reading.
Pulls it out of his
Audio
back.
podcast.
Yeah.
We've talked about it before, yeah.
But in general, I do like dark stories. All three of those things I just mentioned are pretty dark. I was thinking about. So Delta also has dark undertones.
Yeah,
That shouldn't be too surprising.
Well, that way you can have a sequel called Delta Dawn.
Oh,
What are we? I mean, knowing you, we kind of know like your influences. But just for everyone else listening, like, what are, aside from kind of like you were saying, like the Lone Wolf books, like what are some other books that maybe you every year or every so often you're like, I need to reread this?
I do read Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass at least every other year.
Nice.
I read Italo Calvino's Invisible Cities. Same kind of timeline. Samuel Clemens or Mark Twain's Letters from the Earth I read every few years. But the thing that I make sure that I read every year, and I watch it every year, is The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Beagle. I am absolutely obsessed with that book, and the movie is gorgeous. It loses a bunch of stuff that is in the book that makes the book extra special, but the movie is still special to me. Villains are always very important characters to me, and they tend to stick in my memory more. I find that I am more intrigued by them. I sympathize with them a lot of times. And the villains in The Last Unicorn, even if they're not major villains, all of them just live in my imagination. And one of the characters that kind of was a nightmare fuel for me as a child was the skeleton. Oh, you remember what I'm talking about? Okay.
Nodding in acknowledgement.
Just being polite.
There's a skeleton that has kind of almost like a iron horned crown thing or whatever, who's sitting there over a doorway that they want to get into. It's like a magic door situation. They're trying to find their way in. And he demands that they give him wine so that he can tell them where to go. And Schmendrick, the magician, who's an amazing character, pretends to turn water into wine. And he's like, basically like, skeleton stupid, he won't know. And so they hand the wine to him, and he's pretending to drink it. Well, not pretending. He tries to drink it, but it's just falling through him. And when he realizes he's tricked, he ends up being furious, and like his eyes flash red. And it's this scary moment when you're a kid. But the thing that was scarier to me was the idea of being undead, because there's no way for him to ever be satisfied. Even if they gave him wine, he would still be just as angry because he wouldn't have tasted it. He'd still feel thirsty. And so those kinds of questions of thinking about how really awful things can be is something that this is making me sound terrible. It's something that I do consider whenever I'm building story or dealing with characters. It's like, what is the worst thing that can happen to this character, and what do they become after that? So it'll become more obvious when you read the newer version of Delta now with some of the extra stuff that's in it. But that entire world kind of falls apart. All of the negativity, I can't say all of it, but a lot of the negativity radiates from a failed relationship. And I'm not just talking about the relationship between that creator and pagan, that being he had a romantic relationship with another character, and because of his way of acting against that, everything else kind of spins into chaos, which is not at the forefront of volume 1, but all of the pieces are laid there. So I did a lot of breadcrumbing in this book, and I'm trusting and hoping the audience, through discussion, conversation, and kind of exploration, picks up some of those pieces. So we'll see what happens.
So is that something you look for, like in not just movie villains, but villains in general? Like you look for that tragedy, that background, even if maybe they don't have it, you kind of think of like, give them that kind of.
I think that good and evil is often a matter of perspective, and I've told you this before, both of you actually, I think, but a lot of my characters, if you looked at them from outside of their own perspective, you might identify as a villain. And so that is something that I do deal with regularly in terms of my comic book writing, is trying to think about the idea almost of the tragic like hero formula and breaking that down to seeing like, where can this fail that they don't end up on this pillar that we try to put them on? Where can they fail that they continue to fail and take some divergent path? So that does happen a lot with.
Nice. Yeah. As I've gotten older, I've become more fascinated with the quote unquote villain. As a kid, just to make it really basic with Star Wars, when I was a kid, my favorite character was Luke Skywalker because he was a good guy. You follow Luke Skywalker because he was the guy. He goes on the adventure. He becomes the hero. And my brother's favorite was always Darth Vader because he looked cool. And that's easy enough. But as I've gotten older, and to the prequels credit a bit is like somewhat fleshing out the story of Anakin Skywalker, but becoming like the full circle of the tragic character. Darth Vader's only a villain for that certain chunk of it, and I like the idea of the redeeming, full circle thing.
Absolutely.
So that's something that I've always, and so that's why someone like a Darth Vader's become not just one of my favorite Star Wars characters, but one of my favorite characters in fiction, because you get to see that turn of the ultimate good become the ultimate bad, become the ultimate good again, or fulfilling some kind of full circle thing.
Right.
And you can see it as, you could take it different ways,
I always like kind of juxtaposing the more nuanced, like tragic cases. Like, so you get, say, something like Magneto, who's doing it in his own heart of hearts for the best of reasons, or someone like Darth Vader, who maybe started, road to hell being paved with good intentions and everything. But then I also like to juxtapose that against pure, uncompromising evil.
Yeah.
Like, this is what you failed to recognize. This is what you failed to rally against. So to use those two examples, you've got the Magneto, but then Apocalypse shows up, and you're like, there's just nothing, there's no nuance here. He's just bad. Or to use the Star Wars example, there's Darth Vader. He used to be Anakin Skywalker, kind of like did it to protect his wife, ended up killing his wife. But then there's Palpatine. There's no nuance to Palpatine.
Yeah.
He just is.
What I like about, we were talking about Rogue One.
I thought you were going to say Jar Jar Binks. But.
Yeah.
what also just is.
Pure evil. Dead eyes. Doll's eyes. But what I like about Rogue One that they did with Darth Vader so well, and is that they, maybe the first time ever on screen, now there's been plenty of fiction and writings of it, they show how evil he's become. And I think that's one of the things that even some of the great Star Wars moments in other movies is they'd always pull back at the last second. They'd be like, yeah, he killed you, but we don't see it though. Or, I mean, that would have been pretty intense to see in a movie. But, like, or, you know, he's not the one who's responsible for blowing up Alderaan. He, you know, they always pull back a little bit and they give him some kind of justification. And I like that this movie, he's just a horror villain in that scene.
Right.
You know, he is just the unstoppable force. And I like, and that's something I think that it could be very interesting with Vader down the line is you show him at, like, the ultimate. Because I think for that character to work, and I'm only because I've been reading so much stuff, like you show the ultimate good in Anakin Skywalker, which I think the prequels don't necessarily do that well. And what I've been enjoying in Clone Wars is you show how truly good he was and how good he could be. You have to show how truly evil he becomes. And you know, and once you show both sides of that, that makes him the most fascinating character in Star Wars because what other character can go from being like the King Arthur? I keep using the King Arthur thing, but like the King Arthur of Jedi to becoming just the absolute worst.
Mordred.
Yeah, the worst possible thing, you know. And when you allow that character to go that far and you don't put any barriers, they become like fascinating.
Here's a question. We've debated this on the show. Do your stories require a MacGuffin? What do you think of of MacGuffins as a whole?
No, thank you.
Okay, just like hold off on MacGuffins. Because you get some guys like Hitchcock that are like MacGuffins should be innocuous. They shouldn't, you know, they are there to drive the plot forward, but that's it. And then you get guys like Spielberg and Lucas who are like there need to be an integral part, like to the Death Star plans or the Crystal Skull. They need to be an integral part of the story.
I mean, there's different types of stories, obviously. So I feel like if that's what works for you and that's what moves the story forward in your mind, then yeah, that should be shared with the audience. I have to be careful sometimes when I'm writing things because I talk a lot. And so if I'm not cognizant of it, my characters might want to talk a lot, especially if I have verbose characters. And so then my editing process is usually like getting rid of words, getting rid of conversations, cutting things down. And so I tend to try to move things forward through interaction.
Action speaking louder than words.
That's the goal. That's what should be happening in comics because comics is about pictures. You want people to look at things. And that's not to say that there's no place for words, but the story should move forward through pictures. And then the words kind of fill in what the pictures can't.
Right, because like reading Delta, there really, I mean, maybe it's the anthology nature of it, but there really isn't a plot, there isn't a MacGuffin per se. Everything's kind of fairly self-contained and everything, though it's building this bigger tapestry. And so I don't know. I just always that's always I'm always interested to see what people think of like the necessity of plot devices and how integral they are to the story itself.
Well, I'll do this a little bit for you guys, but I'll talk more about what the book really is. And imagine yourself almost as kind of a divine being who is looking for entertainment. And so you check in on the world of New Gaia and you're channel surfing. That's what Delta is. So you're looking at different time periods of this world, seeing different characters, and you decide whether or not their story is interesting to you. And that's why it all culminates in all of the backers getting to vote on which story Kevin and I continue forward. I told you about the Divine Decree pages before. The Divine Decree pages, there's 4 points in the book that have the Divine Decree label. There's some space in the middle. It's different than when you saw it. It's better. And it has the years in question. And it tells you to kind of put in your version of what happened in the time between the stories. And, you know, I have the Tumblr link on there, a little bit.ly for it as well. So I encourage people to put them up online. And by the end of the book, you kind of realize that you are Rael. You're the god that is the cruel god who's taking pleasure in these characters' struggles. You're manipulating them through your investment, your personal investment in the Divine Decree pages. And I just personally feel like there's kind of a creative responsibility when you come up with a character to tell their story, to be respectful of that character and to be respectful of their story. And I like the idea of other people participating in that and being invested in it as well. And so it adds another dimension to the book once we get into the online community sharing their own perspectives on it. And I will be farming that page as well for contributors for Delta Volume 2. So
that's your Delta Dawn.
Yes, accurate. But the other, fun part of it at home is, like, you guys are both getting a copy. Yeah, and so if you fill out your Divine Decree pages and you fill out yours, your book's not the same anymore. You have something extra to talk about. You can kind of see the way that each of you get invested into a story or your own kind of creative tendencies. Because one of the things that, I think about often are the years growing up playing action figures with my siblings, my sister in particular. And I had the same, Robin from Batman the Animated Series that you guys probably did with the yellow hang glider.
I had that Batman over there.
Oh, yeah.
I still do.
Michael Keaton.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you at home, it's the Batman Returns Michael Keaton with extended belt Batman.
Right.
But he no longer has a cape, though.
Poor guy.
Does he still have the extendy belt?
Yes, he does.
Yes, I see that.
Beats mine. Mine doesn't have the extendy belt anymore.
Don't do that motion too much.
Doesn't matter. We're not wearing pants.
That's why it does matter. But yeah,
this is why it's an audio podcast and not a video.
But, just thinking about the fact how we could all have had the same toy and then that toy has different adventures.
Sure.
I was like, how do I do that with a comic book?
Much That's like awesome. How mine lost its cape and yours lost its jerk off function.
I'm sure Bruce can still. Anyway, the so
he's got a gadget for that.
He does. Alfred. Yeah. I like Chris was saying. We just really just dig deeper and darker. And anyway, so other than Pox, what do you have kind of percolating at the moment?
There's a lot of stuff. A few things that I would love to talk about that I can't. One thing, I think statute of limitations on my silence is okay because this project's delayed right now for somebody else's health reasons. But I really wanted to talk to you about it before. I wrote an art house horror film for a production company that's a joint venture between England and Australia that would actually be filmed in Ireland. Yes. So I think I can show you the script. I don't know. I'll whisper that.
We have James Robinson's original LXG script. We have a lot of we were slowly building our archives of unused scripts.
That's right.
Yeah, I have. We have the original League of Extraordinary Gentlemen script.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Still haven't finished it. I feel terrible. But I'm a slow reader.
Does that one have extra Tom Sawyer? Let's hope not.
That was a studio mandate, but that's a whole story.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing that was really fun for that script is they let me go as far as I wanted to. They're like, okay, well, I need to make sure that you guys recognize that I think in cartoons. I do. That's just in everyday life. I see cartoons all the time.
You're always posting the animation stuff on your Facebook.
Yes.
Second share, don't care. I love it.
That's the phrase. Yeah. But they're like, yeah, that's fine. We'll have animation kind of fill things in. And so it's a lot of what I would have wanted from an Alice in Wonderland type movie. I don't know if either of you have seen, read Tale of the Sand. So I love Jim Henson as well. Mm-hmm. And it was a screenplay that he wrote that was never made into anything. So a few years ago, it was still Archaea at that point, Boom. They actually made it into a graphic novel, and it is absolutely gorgeous. It's one of those things that is an experience as opposed to a narrative. And there is narrative through it, but the book itself is an experience. And so I wrote this project which is called The Box, to be something in that vein, in that spirit. And it was a lot different from what I'm normally working with, because I usually take things that are pure or wholesome and I corrupt them. And this time I went the opposite direction. So I had a main character who was damaged by trauma and abuse and, sexual abuse as a child. And I didn't want any of that to be what kind of colors your overall experience. It's something that happened to the character. It doesn't define her. And it's kind of a celebration of spirit and liberation, which is weird for me to say. I can't tell you the ending. Never mind. But yeah, you don't feel that same kind of heavy stuff when you experience the movie. And I wound up, I didn't even have to clash. Like, this is what I will say. It is a really nice feeling when you are working on something and you write something and people tell you, oh yeah, do whatever you want. And then they actually back you up. Yeah. So the guy who was supposed to direct initially was really adamant that he wanted to show the abuse. And I always said that was never going to be a part of it, because anytime you include that in a story, that becomes what the story's about. Mm-hmm. And they supported me on it. So he decided to do something else. But
but that's kind of in holding.
Yes, that one is in limbo. In terms of other stuff, I had a meeting yesterday with a friend of mine who was in LA, but now moved up to Seattle because he works for Pokemon. Ooh. Yes. That was, I have at least one video. I have at least one video call with him a week. And the thing that was happening today when I had my call with him is my son had just gotten back from Target with my mom, who let him spend some of his Christmas money to get Pokemon cards. Since he knows my friend works for Pokemon, he's opening his packs and then keeps walking over to the computer and he's like, oh, look, I got this break card. I'm like, oh, thanks, buddy.
It's Jolteon.
Yeah, he and I are working on a web series that started off, it was just supposed to be a short. But he and I both have a tendency to expand. So what was supposed to be one short on one subject wound up being a 5-episode series with 6 characters. And it's really fun. I'll tell you what the original concept that got us started, because we might use it for something else, but it's no longer an active part of what we're doing right now. Mm-hmm. But when I was watching the election stuff take place before we got the result that we got, I was like, well, wouldn't it be funny if stupidity was contagious? And so, let's just assume I'm the idiot in the room, because you guys are usually here. Mm-hmm. You guys.
It is our show.
Right.
Yeah.
We're usually mired in our own idiocy, but
so
continue.
so I am bringing down your intelligence level to whatever floor. If we all hang out long enough, we'll just be at the same level. Mm-hmm. And so what the short would be, it's a secret government meeting on they're voting for or against intellectual segregation. So that was the basic idea, for something to be completely hyped and absolutely ridiculous. And now it's turned into something different and more cerebral. Okay. Yeah, and using real topics. Yeah. So he had a different mission with it than I did. I just wanted to make something silly. But
well, I'm sure, the game's changed somewhat.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
that's why we're working on Pox.
Right. And there are a couple of other fun anthologies that I have planned. I'm putting them together a little bit slower. One of them I will tell you about because I think you'll get a kick out of it. It follows she calls herself a sex professional, a discount sex professional. And
brand.
yeah, she keeps ending up in horror trope situations. And so, she's always surviving these things and pointing out the stupidity of the other characters. But it's something...
The lone voice of reason.
Right. So it's something that, I've asked a few friends to kind of come up with ideas for, just to put together a silly little terrible black humor book. It's called Cheap Horror, for obvious reasons.
Sounds like my kind of story.
Yeah. And then
I don't know if you've noticed all the horror stuff around here.
Yes, yeah.
I'm in the midst of a Friday the 13th series or movie series rewatch.
And oh, fantastic.
And it's free on Amazon Prime, so it's cheap horror.
There you go.
Got it.
Success. And one of the other things that I had been plugging away at, I am moving it forward again. It's, if you were to imagine, oh man, why am I blanking on his name right now? Machete.
Danny Trejo?
Yeah, Danny Trejo. Okay, thank you, sir. Mm-hmm. If you were to imagine him as a replacement for Christopher Lloyd's Doc character, so he's the kooky scientist or whatever who has a time traveling device, but he ends up in prison and makes friends with this other guy whose dream is to have a taco stand, and so then when they get out of prison, they have a time-traveling taco stand. And so that's the other thing that I've been playing with for fun. That's kind of a less serious thing. So I stay really busy with stuff in between juggling time with the kids and kind of working on these other projects. I told you I'll speak about it cryptically. But I was... for the past 7 months, have been working on an animated series pitch for a celebrity. I can't say who, and it's like an outer space opera kind of thing. And it's been interesting for me in the experience because they come from another industry. The celebrities not usually working in animation stuff. They do have connections and contacts though. And so that's where it's been eye-opening to me, who, is knocking on doors and sending out submissions to companies and studios and all of that stuff, to see how quickly having somebody's name attached opens doors. And it's been faster than what any of them have expected, because they'll contact a studio like Cartoon Network or something, and Cartoon Network's like, great, why don't you come in at 5:00 today? And they're like, oh, no, we're not ready.
We're just sending out feelers.
Right.
You wanted the meeting this week. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's been kind of a surreal experience going along with all of that as well. But there's so many little things that I want to talk about, and I'll string them along.
Off mic, Ryan. Off mic.
Yes.
If that celebrity is Anna Kendrick, wink. Because I would love to meet her.
No, it's not.
That started to narrow it down.
But
all right.
the thing
could still be Jay Leno.
The thing that I found is
He did wink. It's Jay.
Or was it a wink or a blink? I can't tell.
Hey Ryan, I want you to do the thing for me here.
Just make sure to have all my cars in it too.
Yeah. Being in LA, there's like a huge social aspect to it. And it's
gotta go to those parties, man.
Right. And that's what I found. You can't be the guy who's just sitting in front of your computer typing and then sending stuff out to people. You have to actually go socialize, rub elbows, pass out business cards. Oh, I got to give you my new business card.
I got one.
Oh, right,
I want
it. Is this going to be the hookup with Jay Leno?
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
There you go. There's the new one.
Oh yeah. Sweet.
Yeah.
Hold
but
on, I have a business card around here somewhere I can trade with you.
that's just a wet napkin. What?
But it has my name on it.
Yeah. What is this wet with?
You don't want to know.
Yeah. Oh boy. Sweet.
I'm on my baby. I'm on my honey.
Yeah, so I've had to force social interaction into my regular schedule, and part of what that has included is my Second Sons group, which second Sunday of the month every month.
Second son of a second son.
Yeah, excellent.
You're about 5 sons off. Close enough.
Cool.
I think you're referencing Iron Maiden.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yes.
for sure.
Yes. But I have a group of people come over to the apartment and just play whatever random dorky game that I'm doing for that month. So the first one was Metal Gear Risk. That was fantastic. They've
What's jail?
what?
What's jail in Metal Gear? Oh wait,
Risk.
it's Risk, not Monopoly.
I was like, your family plays weird.
He's only allowed out to podcast.
I'm always in free parking. Isn't all parking free, guys? Sam, we're playing Scrabble.
Sam, who are you talking to? You're in a corner by yourself.
Sam, you're the only one here at the podcast.
Yeah.
It's Split. It's that movie Split with.
My name is Hedwig. I have socks.
Oh my god. Yes. So the games. What other games?
Yeah,
you
yeah.
playing?
Metal Gear Risk.
Yes, Metal Gear Risk.
And Metal Gear Monopoly.
The alliteration on that alone.
Not quite there. Dread, if you've played Dread. Do you know Dread?
I know the film.
No, okay.
And the character.
It basically, you can do it with almost any genre of tabletop games, but instead of rolling dice, you pull Jenga blocks.
Oh.
So you use the Jenga tower, which, I mean, every one of these gaming nights, obviously, there's copious amounts of alcohol.
I feel like it's dread the verb, not dread the noun. That's what threw us off.
Yeah.
Dread the dread. Dread
Yeah.
the dread.
Dread the Dread.
Yes. Yeah, so those ones, and then, with the magic and everything else, X-Men Alert, if you remember X-Men Alert. No?
No.
Come on, guys. 90s X-Men board games?
Well, I know 90s X-Men.
I know a 90s X-Men cartoon show.
So what
Sega
you guys
Genesis.
are saying is that before I go back to LA, you're going to come over and you're going to play X-Men Alert and X-Men Under Siege.
That sounds wonderful.
Yeah. You're here until what, the 4th?
Until the 4th.
All right.
We've got to be quick. What are you doing for New Year's?
I got a party in DC. I have a couple parties in DC.
I'm going to
Do they have X-Men Alert?
I'm working.
I'm going to see Ghostbusters 2 in the theaters.
Why? There's one good joke in that movie. I love the first Ghostbusters
Josh just
movie.
made a friend.
Yeah. Of course I love the first Ghostbusters. but
Right.
Ghostbusters 2, once you get past the opening premise.
Once you get past the entire movie. I love love the Do Re Egon. No, I can watch that to no end.
If you loved the first Ghostbusters movie, then you'll love the second Ghostbusters movie because it's all the same jokes.
Strong logic.
And very
That was-
similar situations.
Yeah.
They have a giant creature walking through Manhattan in the climax.
Accurate.
Just this time it's a good guy instead of a bad guy.
It's one of the first films I saw in theaters.
Mm.
Yeah. The very first was the first Crocodile Dundee.
Oh, wow.
To date myself.
I don't remember what the first movie I watched in theaters was. I know the first R-rated movie I watched in theaters was Kickboxer 2.
Ooh.
Huh.
My first R-rated movie was True Lies in theaters.
Oh, nice.
First R-rated movie that I remember watching was Aliens.
Yeah, I don't remember my first R-rated movie in theaters, but I was 5 years old when I saw RoboCop for the first time, and that pretty much changed everything.
Then you started wearing a colander on your head?
Yeah, I just went around and I was just
Dead
know,
or
dead or alive or come with me. They're like, Jake, go to timeout. Dead or alive or come with me.
No more foreplay.
Yeah.
That's not RoboCop, but
I-
that's
That got me in
throwback.
trouble
Yeah.
when the trailer for GoldenEye came out in 1990. It was Christmas 1985. And the end of it, he's like, "No more foreplay." My brother and I like didn't really know what that was all about because we were like, he was 6, I was like 8 or 9. So we'd run around the house during like Christmas time with like family members. We'd be like, "No more foreplay" with the gun, and my mom's like, "You can't say that to random people in the house."
You can't
So-
say that to Grandma Claire.
Yeah, so we weren't allowed to see that movie in theaters.
Was she Grandma Claire really about foreplay? Or was that the reason?
I guess so.
But
She doesn't want to be. I stopped myself before I said it.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about Grandma Claire.
Thankfully, I don't have a Grandma Claire. I hope none of you
I
do.
do. So
Oh.
let's stop now.
Did I just magically pull out the right name?
You did. You did.
just like all those months ago when I said that Eyes Wide Shut was one of your favorite movies.
Yeah.
on
I was like,
on
"How
a
the
whim.
fuck did you know that?"
Because they wear masks.
Yeah, it's that simple.
I feel like I need to rewatch that movie.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
I only saw it when it first came out, and I felt weird.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I think that was the idea.
Okay.
Yeah. My thing is like the 3 things I love. 2 things besides the mask that I love is like that whole scene, like the stuff playing backwards and reverse and just really trippy. Also, the score is like 2 piano notes, just like ding,
Right.
ding, and it's really great. And then all of the locations they could have easily filmed like in New York, but they're clearly on a set. So that makes it feel really claustrophobic and weird. The whole movie, just like you're slowly like collapsing in on yourself, and like Tom Cruise's character. I like the beginning of that movie because like they're all kind of like rich asshole people, doing these parties and blah blah blah. But like Tom Cruise like is kind of a good guy in the beginning. Like that one girl's like ODing, and he's like going out of his way to help because he's a doctor, and he could easily just be another, whatever, blah blah blah.
Right.
And then it all just falls apart because like that scene where how they were married at the time, Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise, where she just like goes out of her way to like just treat him like shit. Like, I don't know, remember how much you remember the movie, but she talks about like the time she has like an affair or whatever, and just like shreds Tom Cruise to like nothing. And that scene must have been like horrible in the first place for them, because their marriage didn't work out in the first place. Anyway, but like the whole
part like right after.
yeah, and that whole movie just was like a disaster. But like I think it's really cool. I think it's really like really kind of weird and scary without ever having a monster in it or really having any kind of like horror stuff.
And that was Kubrick, right? Yeah.
That was pretty much it.
The last
Yeah, it
full
was-
Kubrick
yeah.
film.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he does like the first half of AI.
Yeah.
Right.
So Ryan, as you know, something that we ask everybody that comes on the show, what are you currently geeking out over?
I mean, I'll give a 2-part answer to this. One, obviously I watch a lot of cartoons, and I've been enjoying Drifters a lot. It's an anime from the same guy that made Hellsing. But it takes all these historical characters from the moment at which they were supposed to die, and it pulls them out of our world, our historical context for them, and puts them in this fantasy world where they're all there's 2 groups of them. There's the ends and the drifters, and the ends are mostly for taking out their anger toward the world on this new fantasy world, and they want to like kill things, whatever. And the drifters are motivated by whatever their personal motivation is. And the thing that's fun about it, I'm a history dork about a few like specific things. I love, the Warring States period in China, and I love
That's post Romance of Three Kingdoms.
I mean, mixed into that as well. Like, yes, I love all of that, and the Sengoku period in Japanese history, as well as Meiji Restoration era, but separate subject. So seeing some of these characters pulled into things, I also love Rasputin. Great character, but an interesting historical figure.
Wonderful song.
Yeah, it's great. I was saying, he's very interesting with the benefit of time distancing us.
But a century at this point.
Yeah. So seeing how all of these different characters kind of interact together is fun in terms of the cartoon. But the thing that I watch it more for now is watching Nobunaga's like tactics, because
Is he still just as much of a douche?
oh, he is fantastic. So at one point, they know that all of these soldiers, the Imperial soldiers, are going to come and punish this small village of elves. And so they evacuate their village, and they just fill like the well, all of the wells with shit. And then there's like just crap everywhere in the town. And so then when the soldiers show up, they're like, what the hell is this? And that's when the elves attack with fire after the soldiers have kind of settled and waiting for the soldiers have settled and they're waiting for the elves to come back. And since, the well is full of crap, they don't have any water to put out the fires. And if you get hit with, a flaming poop arrow, like you're worried about going septic. So like these guys have all kinds of concerns like that, but they end up killing the soldiers, cleaning their supplies and, supplying the elves with that stuff. And then they dig out ditches and throw these bodies in to make saltpeter bogs because he's trying to bring gunpowder into this fantasy world. And he does it successfully. So it's kind of cool to watch Nobunaga like corrupt this fantasy world of elves and dwarves and everything like that.
Is Nobunaga that kind of? First off, I've never seen anything from the Sengoku period of Japan that puts Nobunaga in a positive light.
I disagree with that. I'll send you some.
Okay, all right. Because there's always like
you disagree that Sam has never seen anything.
Yes.
Yeah. Samurai Warriors 2, motherfucker. But yeah, he's always. Nobu hasn't that since become like the Japanese word for like devil?
Yeah, but there's different opinions on him. I find that there is some people that celebrate him. Like, did you watch Cashern?
No.
Okay,
so that's a positive.
No, not in there. But the director of Cashern directed a movie Goemon, which.
Samurai Goemon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You should absolutely watch Goemon because it is gorgeous. But Nobunaga is a good guy in that one.
Okay.
As well. Goemon ends up wearing... but if you consider Goemon's allegiance, then he's kind of got to be a good guy in that movie.
Sure.
But, in the end... man, I'm telling you the ends of everything today. But Goemon is wearing Nobunaga's red armor as he goes into battle and everything.
Right. But that was Nobunaga kind of subverting this fantasy world. Kind of reminds me of another one of your favorite, all-time favorite villains, like Shishio.
Oh yeah,
conquering hell.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Did you watch those live-action movies yet? Why not?
It's been like 2 days.
Why not?
Sam.
It has been 2 days. Sam.
Exactly. 2 days.
It's only 3 movies.
I don't. Are they?
You could have watched them 10 times.
Yeah. I am in my off period right now, but no, I have not watched any of the live-action Kenshin films.
Please do.
Okay.
Everyone, please do. Because I need to be able to talk to people about this.
Is Shishio the culmination of, say, movie 2?
I'm not telling you. Watch the movie.
I've seen all of the shows.
For once.
Right, for once.
Yeah.
That's where I draw the line.
On live-action Kenshin.
Right.
Yeah. I did read a lot of the original Kenshin manga.
Yeah.
And Shishio, the Bandage Man.
Yeah.
He
was my favorite adversary.
Yeah.
Well, those movies, when I heard them announced, was already kind of a perfect mixture for me because the guy who plays Kenshin is a former Kamen Rider. He played Kamen Rider Den-O, which, I talked to you guys about my nerdiness with Super Sentai stuff. So it was like, oh, they got a Kamen Rider playing Kenshin? But he's got so many good roles since then as well. So he went from Den-O to being Kenshin, and then he was Mashiro in the Bakuman movie, and he just got another one too. I can't remember, but back to the Geek Out.
You can stream them on the Kenshin movies. You can stream them on Amazon, but they are not free with Prime. So you do have to pay to rent or buy them.
They are
just
worth
to
your
throw
money.
that out there. That was the first and only place I've looked so far.
But are they on Voodoo?
I don't know. I don't check Voodoo. I don't Voodoo. I Voo don't.
If you go to YouTube and just watch a couple of scenes from it, you will be convinced that it's worth your money, I'm sure.
Because the Shishio fight is just the most. That's 5-10 episodes of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And 3 seasons of the animated show are on Netflix.
Yeah. Like I've seen
to tie that in.
I mean, he's helping you out right now.
Yeah, watch Kenshin right there.
Sam,
why have you not watched the live movies since we started talking about
right,
them?
For real.
It's
You've had
only
plenty
3
of
of
time.
That's the second thing you're geeking out over.
So, I've been playing Magic since Magic was somewhat new.
Mm-hmm.
My dad and my brother started when Magic first started, and they got me in probably around 3rd edition. I stopped resisting and became obsessed. But my 12-year-old has started playing Pokemon recently. Yeah. And, my dad bought Pokemon cards when they first came out. Eventually, he gave those to me. I never did anything with them. And I gave them to my daughter, who's 13. She was, just collecting Pokemon cards. And I got my son and my daughter both into playing the DS games. And from that, he's now playing the card games. And he's asked me to play the Pokemon card games with him. And so that's only started since I have come back for the winter break, me actually playing. I'm not the kind of parent that lets their kid win things. So
it was my dad. So
yeah. So he started off by oh yeah, you play this deck and I'll play this one. And after we played a couple of games, I kind of learned the ins and outs of it. It's similar to Magic in some ways. And so I started tweaking the decks a little bit, and he went and brought out more powerful cards and all this. I don't know if any of you guys have ever played the Pokemon games.
Yes. Yeah, I've played Pokemon and Magic. I got into both of them a little bit when the Pokemon card game was coming out.
Can you tell me why would I not just use the ridiculously powerful basic Pokemon instead of doing all of the leveling?
I don't know. I agree.
that was my immediate question.
I think the idea was that people would be, or the kids would be so distracted with I can evolve my Pokemon, that they wouldn't think about that question.
Okay, well that makes sense then, because I was like, dude, it seems like every time you just want to get Zapdos out, and then you want to kill my Froakie before I can turn him into Greninja, or Grey Ninja. Whatever.
Isn't it, they pronounce it Greninja in Smash Brothers.
Well, yes.
I've always gone Gruh.
All right. You learn something every day. It's the more you know. But, that's where I started to retool the deck just to make sure that I could get powerful Pokemon, throw some energy on them, and kill his stuff. So I've been...
Because you only have to kill, 6 of his Pokemon to win?
Something like that.
If they're EX Pokemon, you get 2 cards for defeating one of them, so your prizes go through a little bit faster.
The more you know.
Right. But one of the things that happened, we'll get into parenting life lesson stuff. So like I said, my daughter collects the cards. She doesn't play. And so since my son has been playing, he wants to beat the other kids at school, so he sticky fingers a few cards from his sister's abundant collection. And I had been looking at a Watch Mojo list of just expensive Pokemon cards, and I was like, oh wow, I recognize that Mewtwo. I have that Mewtwo card. So then last time I was back home, I just tried to check in my daughter's stuff to ask her if she couldn't find it. And I was like, oh, maybe I was wrong. And then my son hands me this deck to start playing with, and I see the Mewtwo from there. And I was like, dude, this is 1, your sister's card. 2, this is not in a sleeve. Who raised you? And 3, I'm taking this back. I'm sorry. So it was originally my dad's card. So, I told my daughter it was her decision. We would do with the card what she wanted to do with it, and she agreed that it should go back to Grandpa. But, my son had no idea that he had stolen a $2,000 card from his sister and had brought it to school to play with at recess. So that was eye-opening. I was like, I don't know how I'm supposed to feel. I've been playing Magic this long. I don't have too many cards that I can compare to the price of this one Pokemon card. But
I've been passively trying to find my collection of Pokemon cards because I kept them in like baseball card sleeves.
Yeah.
Keep them cherry. And cherry. Yeah. And like I have no idea what happened to my binder. Last I remember is I let my little sister borrow them because she wanted to start playing Pokemon, and I was like, all right, just don't give them away.
Right.
And now I can't find the binder. She swears that she gave them back to me, and I'm not calling her a liar, but like,
I am.
But I don't remember where I put them when she gave them back to me. If she gave them back to me,
I can completely relate to that feeling. There was a game that was not super popular, but as good as I am at Magic, and I'm comfortable saying that, I was infinitely better at this other game that was called Animahem. And Animahem was an anime-based card game that you would set up these locations, and you had to explore the locations, and you could fight characters against each other. I started that when Set 1 came out. There was a Set 0, then Set 1, and then Set 2 was Dragon Ball Z. And that's where the set became really popular.
Sorry.
And,
I just have to make that noise when that comes up. Sorry.
excited guttural.
Yeah. It was an incredible card game. I loved it. And that's actually when I started going to BC Comics. My parents would bring me there every Friday night. We'd either play Magic or Anime.
They did the tabletop game.
Right. And I was undefeated there. And that's a big thing because there were a few people that would come in every single week and they made up their own, proxy cards. It wasn't a proxy for anything. You just made up, Breath of Fire cards and made them ridiculously powerful. But there was like this 2-card combination that I set myself up to get every time. And I know none of your audience knows what I'm talking about. So this provides no value to anyone.
There's going to be like one guy that's just like, yes.
There's the one guy like,
finally.
There's that one guy like Mick in Rocky 2 who's like sitting there with one sock on and he's like drinking and they're like, hey, he's a bum. He goes, Jesus, he mentioned anime. And he's throwing the soup at the at the radio.
Yeah. So I would do. I would do
Who
this
listens to us on a radio.
2
The
card,
one sock man.
and he's powering it with like a bicycle.
Gotta stay in shape. Gotta stay in shape for the Anime tour.
He said anime, gotta pedal faster.
But there was this 2-card combination I would do every time where there's a card that was called like All Together and had a happy picture of the characters from Tenchi Muyo. And they're all like this for a group photo or whatever. And it was created for you to bring all your characters to a location so you could fight a disaster, a bad guy. But I would use it to bring all of somebody else's characters to the same location. And then I would use another card, more powerful in this game than it is in Magic, called Wrath of God from El Hazard, which...
From Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah. Just close your eyes when they put it out and you can't do anything to you.
Well, that card would destroy a location and everything that was at it. So I bring your entire team to one place, and then I kill them in one hit.
Lure them in with Tenchi, and then blow them up.
Yeah, exactly. But I had amassed there's no other word for it, a sexy collection. From all 3 sets, I had 2 uncut card sheets. Each Super Saiyan card was at least $90, and I had multiples. I had the most ridiculous luck with this game, where every time I opened a pack, I would get another Super Saiyan when the Dragon Ball set was out.
It took him like 3 seasons to get one.
Yeah.
And like a whole season just to power up the Spirit Bomb.
Yeah. But I had this big collection, and then divorce happened, and that wasn't in the first group of things that I moved out, and then they were magically gone. Similar situation. She said she returned them to me, but no.
Super Saiyans.
Super sads.
Like tears and rain.
Right.
Well, I think on that morose note, for all those Kickstarter backers for the Delta Anthology, you heard it straight from the source. Expect the book early spring at the latest, which reminds me I have to update you my mailing address because I live in Arlington now.
Yes, you do.
keep an eye out for future projects and self-funded, or public funded campaigns from Ryan and myself. But
Guest starring Sam.
Yeah, I have that little it's like a comic book, and it's like also featuring Manhunter, and I'm like that little bubble in the bottom. I'm just like, hey, don't forget me. Today's backup feature, Power Pack. So
Yes.
I could pitch the shit out of a Power Pack story. Anyway, that aside, yeah. So keep an eye out. Do you guys have anything new since the last time we recorded?
Absolutely not.
No.
Cool.
100% no.
All right. Well,
Didn't you get that triple nipple piercing, Jake?
I'm pretty sure I mentioned that last episode.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Might have got
our
deleted, but good on you for that.
That was
The 5-minute look at these goddamn nips song.
Look at these goddamn the newest jam of the summer. The hot ringtone on iTunes.
Yeah.
What ends up on our cutting room floor.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. From our lips to your ears. But yeah. So this has been another installment of Catching Up. Thanks again, Ryan, for coming on.
Thank you for having.
I'm Sam.
I'm Chris.
I'm Jake.
And welcome to 2017.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Good night, Eric Bana.
Fried chicken.
Chicken.
This has been another Geek Out production. If you enjoyed what you heard, hey, we've got a new commentary every Monday. We've got a special episode every Friday. Of course, there's the usual Catching Up show every Wednesday. And you get book club episodes just about every Tuesday these days. Thanks for listening.